The city was alive with lights, cars rushing by, and the faint hum of late-night chatter. At the heart of it all stood the grandest hotel anyone could imagine. From the outside, it looked flawless, gleaming windows, polished floors, and a front desk that seemed ready to serve the most important guests. But tonight, the hotel was about to face a test it had never seen before. In the shadows, a man stepped out of a sleek black car. He was tall, dressed in plain clothes that hid his usual luxury suits, and wore a cap that covered most of his face. To anyone looking, he was just another traveler. But in reality, he was the most powerful person in the building. He was the CEO, the owner of this hotel empire, but no one knew it. Tonight, he would walk through his own lobby, unnoticed, and see how his staff treated someone ordinary. He paused for a moment, looking up at the hotel's grand entrance. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from curiosity. He had built this empire from scratch. Every hotel, every room, every staff member had been chosen carefully. And yet, he wondered, would they treat him with respect if they did not know who he was? With a calm step, he walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was buzzing with activity. Guests checked in, children ran around, and the staff moved gracefully from one task to another. Everything seemed normal, almost perfect. Then he approached the front desk. He cleared his throat and spoke politely. "Hello, I have a reservation for tonight. Name is Marcus Wells." The receptionist glanced at him, barely making eye contact. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a room under that name." "Do you have a card?" she asked, her tone cold, almost dismissive. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had expected polite questions, maybe a slight delay. But not this complete lack of respect. He handed over a card, keeping his voice calm, hiding the growing frustration inside him. "Everything seems to be in order, sir," the receptionist said, tapping keys on her computer. "But I'm afraid we are fully booked tonight. Maybe try another hotel." The words hit him like a slap. He blinked, staring at her. "Excuse me." His voice was steady, but inside, a storm brewed. How could they deny him a room in his own hotel? He had built this place, hired these people, and ensured every detail reflected excellence. And yet, here they were, treating him like an unwanted stranger. He paused, observing her face. There was no apology, no hint of politeness. Just an air of superiority, as if she was doing him a favor by speaking to him. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He could have revealed himself immediately, shown them who he really was, but he did not. Not yet. Instead, he smiled quietly, a slow, calm smile that did not reach his eyes. He was planning something they would never forget. His mind raced with ideas, each one sharper than the last. Every rude word, every dismissive gesture was being noted, stored, remembered. Turning slightly, he walked slowly into the lobby, letting his eyes scan the room. He noticed the bellboys, who smiled at wealthy-looking guests but ignored him. He noticed the concierge, whispering to each other while pretending not to watch him. Every action, every glance, every subtle act of disrespect was logged in his mind. He moved to the lounge area, sitting quietly in a corner. From here, he could see everything: how the staff interacted with guests, how they followed rules, how they spoke when they thought no one was watching. His calm demeanor masked a growing determination. He was not angry because of the refusal alone. He was angry because they thought they could treat anyone like him, with disrespect. Hours could have passed, but it felt like minutes. Marcus observed quietly, sipping a glass of water, pretending to read a magazine. Yet every move in the lobby seemed slow, deliberate, almost staged. And that made him smile slightly, because soon, all of them would learn a lesson they would never forget. Just as he was about to leave, a small boy ran past him, dropping a toy on the floor. He picked it up and handed it back, smiling. The boy's mother thanked him, and for a brief moment, he felt the warmth of genuine human interaction. It reminded him why he had built his hotels, not just for money, but to create experiences, to create respect. As he stood to leave, he glanced back at the front desk one last time. The receptionist looked up, noticing him for the first time, yet she had no idea who he truly was. Marcus Wells, the man who owned the hotel, was about to show them a side of him they would never forget. The camera of his mind recorded every moment, every detail. In 9 minutes, everything would change. And with that thought, Marcus walked out of the lobby, quietly, calmly, leaving behind a storm that would soon break. Marcus Wells walked slowly away from the front desk, his steps quiet but purposeful. The hotel lobby buzzed with life, yet he felt like he was moving in slow motion. Every detail mattered tonight. The smallest gesture, the faintest glance. He was no longer just a guest. He was a silent observer, taking in everything the staff did, testing them in ways they would never understand. From a corner table near the large glass windows, Marcus sat down. He could see the entire lobby from here. The bellboys hurrying with luggage, the concierge helping guests with reservations, and the housekeeping staff moving quickly to ensure perfection. On the surface, everything seemed normal, almost flawless. But Marcus knew better. Beneath their polite smiles, he suspected arrogance, impatience, and carelessness. Things that could ruin a hotel experience in an instant. He watched a young bellboy approach a wealthy-looking guest. The boy smiled, nodded, and held the door open with exaggerated politeness. Yet, when a regular-looking man, a businessman with simple clothes, entered, the bellboy barely looked up. Marcus's jaw tightened. Every movement, every choice of whom to help first, revealed the staff's true priorities. And tonight, he was memorizing it all. The concierge, a woman with sharp eyes and perfectly styled hair, whispered to a colleague as she checked a reservation. Marcus caught the flicker of judgment in her gaze. It was subtle, almost invisible, but he saw it. Little things reveal a lot, he thought. They think their faces hide their thoughts, but nothing escapes me tonight. He noticed how some staff ignored minor complaints from guests who didn't seem important enough. A man complained about his room being too warm. The staff member barely nodded, muttering something under his breath. Another guest requested extra towels, and a response was delayed, impatient. Marcus leaned back, sipping his water slowly. He smiled, but it was a cold, calculated smile. Then, a surprising scene caught his attention. A senior staff member, a woman who seemed to think she ran the hotel more than the management, approached a new employee. She gave instructions in a harsh tone, her words sharp and dismissive. Marcus watched the new employee's nervous smile, the slight tremble in his hands. Confidence without respect is useless, Marcus whispered to himself. He was making mental notes. Names, faces, actions, all cataloged for the moment that would come. Marcus's calm observation wasn't just about recording mistakes. He also noticed small kindnesses. A housekeeping staffer helped an elderly guest with her luggage without being asked. Another quietly guided a lost visitor to the lounge. Marcus's eyes softened slightly. These small moments told him who genuinely cared and who only acted when someone important was watching. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. Marcus did not move from his seat. He asked for nothing, yet everything he observed gave him insight. He wasn't here to punish for minor mistakes. He was here to uncover the true character of his staff. Those who acted with arrogance, who ignored or disrespected people they thought were unimportant, were being recorded, not just mentally, but in the story he would write for them. A group of employees gathered near the elevators, laughing loudly at a small joke. But when they noticed Marcus passing by, they straightened instantly. One staff member muttered something under his breath, thinking no one could hear. Marcus heard every word, every thought, every attitude. It all mattered tonight. The clock ticked steadily, and Marcus felt a thrill building inside him. 9 minutes. That was all the time he had planned for what would come next. He did not rush. He did not panic. He was calm, patient, like a chess player waiting for the right moment to make a move. He leaned back and took a deep breath. They have no idea who I am, he thought, and that made their arrogance even worse. He imagined the faces of those who had refused him a room, the receptionist, the bellboys, the senior staff, and the thrill of what was coming next made his pulse quicken. Yet, Marcus did not act rashly. He needed more proof, more observation. Every smile, every shrug, every glance mattered. Even small mistakes would be used later, not as revenge, but as lessons. He wanted them to understand respect, humility, and the consequences of thinking power comes from appearances rather than actions. As he quietly left the corner, he moved closer to the center of the lobby. The staff went about their work, unaware that the man they had dismissed, the man they had underestimated, was watching everything. He was not angry, at least not outwardly, but the fire inside him was growing. He paused near the elevator doors and whispered under his breath, "In 9 minutes, everything changes." And with that, Marcus Wells, the silent observer, walked slowly back to the front desk, calm, collected but ready. The staff had no clue that their lives were about to be turned upside down, all because one man knew the truth, and they didn't. Marcus Wells moved silently through the lobby, his eyes scanning every detail with precision. Every gesture, every glance from the staff was etched into his mind. He had watched their arrogance, their impatience, their careless attitudes, but tonight was about more than observation. Tonight, he would see just how far their disrespect could go. He approached the front desk again, this time with a slight change in demeanor. Instead of calm politeness, he added a hint of assertiveness to his voice. "Excuse me, I need a room immediately." Name still Marcus Wells. The receptionist's brow furrowed slightly. "Sir, we are still fully booked. Perhaps you could wait for cancellation?" Marcus's eyes narrowed just enough to show that he was not amused. "I don't have time to wait," he said simply, his tone still polite but firm. The woman blinked, a small flicker of irritation crossing her face. She called the manager over, hoping someone more authoritative could handle this problem guest. Marcus watched her carefully, noting every micro-expression, every tiny betrayal of her confidence. The manager, a man in a crisp suit with a polished smile, approached. "How may I help you, sir?" he asked. "I have a reservation. I need a room," Marcus repeated, steady and calm. The manager scanned the system, then looked up. "I'm sorry, sir. All rooms are occupied tonight." Marcus kept his composure, but inside, he felt the first sparks of satisfaction. The staff's arrogance was blatant. They believed they could deny anyone a room, anyone, without consequences, and they were about to learn the cost of that assumption. He stepped aside and let a guest pass by, observing the manager closely. The man's eyes flickered with uncertainty, a subtle reaction Marcus noted carefully. He then moved to the concierge, asking a series of questions designed to test their attentiveness. Directions to a local restaurant, special arrangements for a hypothetical VIP guest, and requests for extra amenities. With each request, the staff stumbled, fumbled, or ignored parts of his questions. The concierge answered half-heartedly. The bellboys hesitated, and the receptionist checked her screen repeatedly, clearly flustered. Marcus's calm exterior hid the storm building inside him. Every mistake, every lapse in professionalism was proof of their disregard, not just for him, but for anyone who did not appear important. He made a mental note of each staff member's behavior, carefully cataloging who showed incompetence and who had a spark of integrity. This was not just about punishment. It was about uncovering the truth of character. Then came the final test. Marcus asked to see a special suite, one usually reserved for high-profile guests. The staff hesitated. The receptionist's fingers tapped nervously on the keyboard. The bellboy shifted uncomfortably. The manager smiled awkwardly, tried to maintain control, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "Sir, I'm afraid the suite isn't available," the manager said finally, with a tone that Marcus would remember forever. That was it, the final spark. Marcus's calmness did not waver, but inside he smiled. They had shown their true colors. They had underestimated him completely. He could have revealed himself right then and there, but he did not. He had something much better planned. He excused himself politely, walking to the center of the lobby where he could observe the reactions of multiple staff members at once. Some glanced at him curiously, unaware that the man they were dismissing was the owner. Others carried on, confident in their authority, thinking they were in control. Marcus leaned against a marble pillar, his thoughts sharp and calculated. He imagined the upcoming scene, how the staff would react when the truth came out, how their arrogance would crumble under the weight of reality. He could see it clearly, like a chessboard laid out before him. Every move had been planned, every reaction predicted. The thrill of anticipation surged through him. The lobby, bustling with activity, seemed almost cinematic. Each mistake he had witnessed, each display of disrespect, was a thread that would unravel the staff's confidence in mere minutes. He felt a strange satisfaction knowing that justice, long overdue, was about to be served. Yet Marcus remained patient. He did not rush. He let the staff stew in their ignorance a little longer, watching their behavior, noting every tiny detail. They had created their own downfall through arrogance, and he would simply allow it to unfold. Finally, he straightened, his calm exterior hiding a storm inside. 9 minutes, he murmured under his breath. 9 minutes is all it will take. With that, Marcus walked toward the back office, unseen by the staff. What happened next would shock them completely. They had no idea that the man they had disrespected, the guest they thought insignificant, held the power to change everything in an instant. And as he disappeared behind the doors, the audience could sense it, the calm before the storm. The CEO in disguise had been denied a room, tested every staff member, and now, the moment of reckoning was almost here. The lobby remained unaware, but the clock was ticking. 9 minutes, and everything would change. Marcus Wells disappeared behind the tall wooden doors of the hotel's private office, his steps silent but deliberate. Out in the lobby, the staff continued their work, completely unaware that the guest they had dismissed, ignored, even insulted, was no ordinary visitor. Marcus closed the door behind him and allowed himself a small, private smile. 9 minutes. That was all the time it would take for everything to change. He leaned over his polished desk, looking at the phone and the secure company network. With a few swift movements, he sent messages to his trusted assistants, alerting them to the situation. These were people who understood his methods, who knew his temper when it came to arrogance and disrespect. Every command he gave was precise, concise, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Start the procedure," he whispered, almost to himself. "In exactly 9 minutes, it begins." He pulled out his phone and called the front desk manager directly. The manager answered, cheerful and unsuspecting. "Yes, Mr. Johnson. Everything okay?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Everything's fine. I just want you to prepare for an inspection. Make sure the staff is ready for a review of their performance. You'll need to be in the lobby in 5 minutes." There was a pause. The manager adjusted his tie nervously. "Of course, sir. Run away." Marcus hung up, leaning back in his chair. The storm was coming, and the calm before was almost delicious. He reviewed the staff's recent behaviors in his mind. The bellboy's arrogance, the receptionist's cold dismissal, the concierge's subtle superiority. Each act of disrespect had been noted. Each mistake would now have consequences. He opened a laptop and pulled up the security footage from the lobby. Watching the video, he replayed the scenes where the staff had been careless, rude, or dismissive. Marcus's calm exterior remained, but inside, he was building a mental script for the lesson they were about to learn. Each employee would face the consequences of their actions, and it would be clear that respect could not be bought with appearances. It had to be earned. A knock on the office door made Marcus turn his head. It was one of his trusted assistants, someone who had worked with him for years. "Sir, everything is set. Security is in place. Staff is being discreetly notified, and the lobby cameras are streaming to us live," she said, her voice steady but tinged with anticipation. Marcus nodded. "Good. Remember, this is not just about anger or revenge. This is about showing them the truth. They need to understand what happens when arrogance blinds them to respect." His assistant gave a small smile, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Understood, sir. Everyone is in position. Just say the word." Marcus glanced at the clock on his desk. 7 minutes had passed since he first retreated to the office. The tension in the lobby was building unknowingly. Staff members whispered to one another, thinking nothing of the quiet figure they had dismissed earlier. Some still frowned over minor mistakes they had made during the night. None suspected that the CEO, the owner, was about to walk among them fully aware of every misstep. He straightened his tie, exuding calm authority. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone would be enough to command attention. Yet, the beauty of the plan lay in its timing. The moment he stepped back into the lobby, everything would fall into place like dominoes. Marcus's eyes lingered on the security monitors one last time. He saw the receptionist glancing around nervously, unaware that the person she had dismissed earlier had returned, fully in control. The bellboys carried luggage with practiced precision, yet their confidence was misplaced. They had no idea who truly controlled this hotel. He tapped his fingers lightly on the desk. For minutes remained. He took a deep breath, letting the anticipation build. Every detail had been accounted for. Staff positions, guest interactions, cameras, security personnel. The moment was perfect. Then he stood. The office door opened smoothly, and Marcus walked out. His disguise gone, his true presence revealed. Tall, confident, and undeniably powerful. The lobby seemed to pause for a fraction of a second, the air thick with tension. Marcus Wells, the man they had ignored, was now walking among them. In that moment, the staff felt it. Something had shifted, though none could name it yet. The calm, ordinary guest was gone. In his place was the man whose decisions could change lives in an instant. And Marcus knew the next few minutes would leave lessons they would never forget. 9 minutes. Exactly as planned. Marcus Wells walked into the lobby with calm confidence. Every step measured, every movement deliberate. The lights reflected off the polished marble floors, glinting in his eyes, but he hardly noticed. His focus was on the staff, the ones who had dismissed him, ignored him, and acted as if they were untouchable. He removed his cap and let his presence fill the room. Immediately, the air changed. The receptionist froze mid-typing. The bellboys halted with luggage in hand, and even the concierge stopped speaking to a guest. The moment had arrived. Marcus Wells, the owner, the CEO, was no longer just another visitor. He was the authority. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I hope everyone is having a productive night." The staff exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to respond. Some attempted polite smiles, others avoided his eyes entirely. But Marcus saw through every mask. He knew who had been arrogant, who had been dismissive, and who had acted as if respect was a privilege only given to certain guests. He walked slowly toward the front desk, stopping just short of the receptionist. "Do you remember me?" he asked softly, yet with a tone that carried weight. The woman's face drained of color. I think so, sir," she stammered. Marcus smiled faintly, a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I'm Marcus Wells, owner of this hotel, and tonight I have been observing every action, every word, and every choice each of you made while you thought I was just another guest." A collective gasp went through the lobby. The staff's nervous chatter turned into stunned silence. They realized, all at once, that they had been judged, and the one judging them was more powerful than anyone they had ever imagined. Marcus did not shout. He did not raise his voice. He simply walked the lobby, stopping at each staff member, calling their name, and recounting the specific mistakes they had made, the arrogance, the dismissiveness, the failures to respect even ordinary guests. Each example was precise, undeniable, and deeply humiliating. "I saw how you refused me a room," he said to the receptionist. "I saw how you prioritized certain guests over others. And I saw how you treated the bellboys, the housekeeping staff, and even new employees with condescension." The staff tried to explain themselves, but Marcus raised a hand, stopping them. "No excuses. You had your chance to act with respect and professionalism. You failed, and tonight there are consequences." He turned to the manager, who had been quietly trembling near the elevators. "Effective immediately, you are all relieved of your duties. Every single one of you." Shock rippled through the lobby. Some gasped audibly, others froze, unable to comprehend the magnitude of what had just been said. The bellboys dropped luggage with a thud. The receptionist sank in her chair, and the concierge clutched her notes as if trying to make sense of reality. Marcus's assistant, positioned discreetly in the lobby, began handling the logistics. Security personnel quietly moved in, escorting each staff member to a private area to complete formalities. The staff, once full of arrogance, now looked small, powerless and ashamed. But Marcus did not stop there. He addressed the remaining guests, who had been watching in stunned silence. "We apologize for any inconvenience caused tonight," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "We strive for excellence, and tonight we are taking steps to ensure that respect and professionalism are always at the core of our service." The guests nodded, impressed by the CEO's decisiveness. The atmosphere shifted. What had been an ordinary night turned into a lesson for everyone present. Marcus's eyes scanned the lobby one last time, resting on each former staff member. There was a mixture of shame, regret, and disbelief on their faces, and Marcus allowed himself a small, quiet satisfaction. He did not gloat, nor did he revel in their humiliation. This was about lessons, about respect, about showing that arrogance and carelessness, even in a grand hotel, had consequences. He had given them every opportunity to prove themselves. They had failed, and now they would carry the memory of this night forever. Marcus turned and walked toward the exit, his steps calm, confident, unhurried. Guests whispered among themselves, astonished at what had just unfolded. The lobby staff had been replaced by temporary personnel Marcus had already arranged, ensuring the hotel continued to operate flawlessly. As he stepped outside, the cool night air hit his face. He paused, looking back at the hotel one last time. Inside, chaos had been replaced by order. Arrogance had been replaced by humility. And Marcus Wells, CEO of the empire, had shown that power and respect were inseparable. 9 minutes had passed since he first retreated to the office. 9 minutes to observe, plan, and execute. And in that time, he had reminded everyone in the lobby, the staff, the guests, and even himself, that respect is earned, not assumed, and that no one is untouchable. Marcus smiled quietly to himself. Justice had been served. The lobby was quiet now, but it was not the calm of peace. It was the quiet of stunned disbelief. Marcus Wells had left, but his presence lingered like a shadow. The staff, once bustling with confidence and authority, now sat in small clusters, whispering among themselves. Their arrogance had evaporated, replaced with shame and fear. Each employee replayed the events in their minds, unable to fully comprehend how a single man could have turned their night, and perhaps their careers, upside down. The receptionist, her face pale and eyes wide, stared at the empty desk. She remembered her dismissive words, the cold tone she had used, the subtle sneer she thought no one had noticed. Now, she realized they had not only been noticed, they had been judged, cataloged, and condemned. She could feel the weight of her mistakes pressing down, heavier than she had ever imagined. The bellboys, who had once strutted through the lobby with misplaced confidence, now hunched over their carts. Their laughter, once loud and careless, had vanished. They whispered apologies to each other, though they knew it was too late. Marcus Wells had shown them that appearances, arrogance, and false authority meant nothing when faced with true power and wisdom. Even the manager, who had thought he could handle the situation with charm and polite words, sat stunned. He had underestimated the man who had walked in disguised as a guest. Every decision he had made that evening, every choice to overlook arrogance, every wink to staff who had acted carelessly, had now come back to him in the form of sudden and undeniable consequences. Outside the hotel, the night air was cool and calm, but inside, the staff felt the storm they had brought upon themselves. Guests whispered among themselves, watching the aftermath unfold. Many expressed surprise at the CEO's decisiveness. Some nodded in silent approval, impressed that a leader could act so quickly, so justly, without losing composure. Marcus Wells had not acted out of anger or revenge. He had acted out of principle. Every staff member had been given a chance to demonstrate respect, patience, and professionalism. Every failure had been observed, every arrogance recorded. And now, they faced the consequences, swift, undeniable, and necessary. One by one, the staff began to understand the lesson. Respect is not something granted by titles, uniforms, or appearances. It is earned through actions, kindness, and integrity. The arrogance that had allowed them to dismiss a man they thought was just a guest had blinded them to this truth. In the corner of the lobby, a housekeeping staffer quietly spoke up, her voice trembling. We never realized. We treated people differently based on how they looked, based on what we thought they had. Her words were filled with shame, but also with understanding. She had finally grasped the lesson Marcus had intended for them. Another staff member whispered, I can't believe we didn't notice he was the owner all along. His voice was small, filled with awe and regret. He replayed the earlier moments, how he had ignored polite requests, how he had judged guests by appearances, how he had thought power was something others had to earn by favoring the rich or influential. He now understood how wrong he had been. The lobby, once full of casual arrogance, was now filled with reflection and quiet remorse. Marcus Wells's presence had been brief, but the impact was permanent. The staff had learned a lesson that could not be taught in training sessions or meetings. It had to be experienced, felt, and remembered. Meanwhile, guests who had witnessed the events left the hotel with a newfound respect. They shared stories with friends, colleagues, and family about the night the CEO revealed himself and how justice had been served. Word spread, not as gossip, but as a lesson. In Marcus Wells's hotels, respect was not optional. Marcus himself returned to his private office, watching from a distance via security feeds. He did not need to intervene further. The lesson had been delivered, the consequences set in motion. He leaned back in his chair, satisfied. The hotel would continue running smoothly. New staff would be brought in, and the arrogance that had plagued the night would be replaced with humility and professionalism. He paused for a moment, thinking about what had just occurred. 9 minutes. That was all it had taken to expose arrogance, reveal true character, and enforce respect. The lesson would last far longer than any disciplinary action. In that quiet moment, Marcus Wells allowed himself a small smile, knowing that he had not only protected his hotel, but had reminded everyone that true power comes from respect, not appearances. The storm had passed. The lobby was calm again, but everyone inside knew they would never forget this night. And somewhere in the shadows of the hotel, Marcus Wells prepared for the next challenge, knowing that respect, vigilance, and wisdom were always worth defending. The lobby of the hotel had returned to its polished, orderly state, but the echoes of the night lingered like whispers in the marble walls. Marcus Wells walked slowly toward the exit, his presence commanding yet calm. The guests had returned to their rooms or quietly continued with their evening plans, but the staff, new and old, carried a weight they could not shake. They had seen firsthand what happens when arrogance meets authority, and the lesson would linger far longer than any temporary punishment. Marcus paused for a moment, looking back at the lobby one last time. He saw the new staff moving with careful attention, their eyes alert and their actions measured. The arrogance that had once filled the space had been replaced with humility and focus. He smiled faintly, knowing that the lesson had been internalized. This was the change he had wanted, not mere fear but understanding. As he walked outside, the cool night air wrapped around him. The city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, reflecting off the streets below. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the calm that follows a storm. The events of the night had been intense, dramatic, and necessary, but they were also a reminder of a simple truth: respect cannot be assumed. It must be earned, nurtured, and preserved. He thought about the staff he had observed, the receptionist, the bellboys, the concierge, and the manager. Each had a moment in which they could have acted differently, chosen humility over arrogance, politeness over dismissal. Yet they had not, and that had cost them, not in money or status, but in understanding the fundamental principles of human respect. Marcus's mind wandered briefly to the guests he had silently observed throughout the evening. He had seen their interactions, their frustrations, and their small victories. He realized that leadership was not only about managing staff, it was about ensuring that every guest, every person in the hotel, felt valued, seen, and respected. This was why he had come in disguise, to witness the truth, unfiltered by uniforms or titles. He remembered the thrill of walking among the staff in disguise, the subtle smirks and dismissive gestures, and how they had underestimated him completely. That underestimation had been their downfall, but it had also been his test. Marcus had not acted impulsively. He had waited, observed, and calculated. When the moment was right, he had executed with precision, ensuring that justice and learning went hand in hand. As he continued down the street, he reflected on the lessons of the night. True power is not in wealth, position, or appearances. It is in understanding people, observing carefully, and taking measured action when necessary. He had reminded everyone in the lobby that arrogance is a dangerous companion, and respect, once lost, must be earned back through conscious effort. Marcus paused at a street corner, glancing back at the hotel one final time. The lights glimmered against the glass windows, but inside, the echoes of the night remained. He imagined the conversations among the former staff, the whispers of regret, the silent promises to do better, the realization that their actions had consequences far beyond what they could see in the moment. A small smile curved his lips. He knew they would remember this night for years to come, not just because they had been reprimanded or replaced, but because they had been shown clearly and undeniably the importance of respect, humility, and integrity. As he walked further, Marcus reflected on his own role in the evening. He had been calm, observant, and strategic, qualities that had allowed him to turn a night of disrespect into a lesson that resonated far beyond the walls of the hotel. Leadership was not about showing anger or power. It was about demonstrating principle, maintaining control, and ensuring that every action, every decision carried meaning. He paused again, taking a deep breath. The city hummed around him, alive and indifferent, yet the hotel, and everyone in it, had been changed. Marcus Wells, CEO, had acted not out of vengeance, but out of a desire to maintain the values he had built his empire on: respect, professionalism, and integrity. With one last glance, Marcus smiled quietly to himself. The night was over. The lesson had been delivered. The arrogance had been replaced by humility, the ignorance by understanding. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that leadership, true leadership, leaves a mark that no one forgets. He walked into the shadows of the city, calm, confident, and purposeful. Behind him, the hotel gleamed, orderly and polished, a symbol not just of luxury, but of respect earned and lessons learned. Marcus Wells had left his mark, not through anger, but through the quiet, powerful force of wisdom, and the knowledge that true respect, once understood, changes everything.